transfer silly season is back with a vengeance. I want to touch on, like, obviously you put out some material on Twitter and obviously through the Telegraph, where you've talked about no panic buys and kind of areas of importance and stuff like that. I want to start with the outgoings first, because I think that this is the thing that sets up potentially any incomings. First one on my list, and I think this is a sore one for a lot of Chelsea fans, is Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, who has been, I think, pretty publicly told he can find other opportunities after 6 months at the club. We got a question from Satchet on Discord saying, how did Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, a player who played under Maresca last season and flourished, get transfer listed in 6 months? Manager's decision, club decision, just pure form? Like, what the hell happened here? Because this is potentially one of the worst signings that we've made, if this is true, that he's going to potentially leave on a permanent in January.
Big call out, one of the worst signings. I mean, I still remember Timu Bakayoko.
Timo played for a while at least.
Yeah. No, I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I'm just trying to think back to some of the.
I mean, Lukaku's number one ever.
Drinkwater. How much was Drinkwater?
About the same as Dewsbury-Hall. I think it was like 35, 40, something like that.
Yeah. I mean,
Drinkwater, I always balance out in my brain because we got Conte for so little that it felt like the combo fee. It was about right for Conte, so I was fine with that one. This is pretty brutal, though. No,
it is brutal, and I was surprised when I made a check on it yesterday that the message I got was that they would prefer to sell him than loan him. That they want to sell him pretty much. He's just not. This wasn't explicitly said to me, but he's clearly just not achieved the level they thought he would achieve or be able to achieve. Look, the way I read it, and this was the transfer in the summer. I remember I was in Germany covering the Euros, and it was quite hard at the time covering all the Euros in England and staying on top of the transfer things. And I remember thinking I was fairly on top of the Chelsea transfers. I knew where most of them were going, and I couldn't write everything I knew, but I felt like I knew where the pieces were. And this is the one I remember being in an office somewhere and hearing about this and just being, no, that can't be true. Like that just can't be true. So it doesn't make any sense. I couldn't make any sense for the time. When I talked to people about it, it was described to me as a little bit like, it felt like it was a bit of an attempted present for the head coach, a player he knew, a player in the dressing room who could help him, a player on the training ground who could help him, someone who would immediately take hold of his methods and try and spread positivity around and be able to take on his methods straight away. That made some sense to me until the season started. And also it was described to me that he was this sort of Swiss Army knife player and he could play in quite a variety of roles around the midfield. And it just gave them great options within the squad. And again, before the season started, I started to sort of, in my head, make some peace of it and not think it was quite as crazy as it looked. But then within 6 weeks of the season, it kind of felt like Enzo had no interest in him. Like he wasn't making squads. He wasn't being tried anywhere. He wasn't really even being given a chance. Now he gets a chance on the training field where I'm guessing he hasn't impressed very highly. But the weirdest thing about this transfer for me is the biggest thing you could say about it is it was probably a misguided attempt to give the new head coach a bit of a present. But it's a present he doesn't seem to have wanted at any point. Look, no club gets all transfers right. Chelsea have certainly had their misses over the years. All clubs have their misses. This is clearly a miss. What I would say, 35 million for Dewsbury-Hall, I still think Chelsea would have a chance of recouping quite a lot of that. Certainly is whatever his book value now is, and how much of that 35 they actually had to pay. I don't know whether some of it was tied up in bonuses. I still think at this stage they would probably, in terms of book value, be able to get a lot of their money back on him. And for him, he'll probably still get quite a good club. I'm told I can't say who because I've been sworn to secrecy because I could mess up a deal. There's one massive club in Europe in for him, one massive club showing an interest in him, and it's genuine. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. And like I said, I've been warned that were I to write it or say it, I could mess up the whole thing, and it's really not worth my while doing that. But West Ham definitely like him. I mean, obviously they've got a managerial change going on. How much that affects things, we'll see. There'll be a lot of Premier League interest, but there's one massive European club interested in him as well. It's his reputation outside Chelsea probably hasn't fallen as dramatically as it has within Chelsea for not playing. But he's just clearly not up to the level for Chelsea. He's just clearly not there.
No. I mean, yeah, it's like it almost with everything that Chelsea did in the transfer window, it's like, you know, like when you get two of the same present for your birthday, and you're like, and you have to fake the second one when you got what you wanted already. Like that's kind of how this feels to me. Like it's not. He's obviously not a bad guy. He obviously, you know, I think has said and done the right things. He's clearly been like you can see it on his face. It's like pained him that it's not worked.
Yeah. And I think Enzo very early said he was just also struggling at being at a club like Chelsea. He's clearly not settled particularly well in the harsher environment too. What I would say about this Chelsea ownership is, and people can use this as a positive or a negative because you can portray it either way. I'm not going to try and portray it as either, but they move fast.
Yeah.
They move fast. If they don't think a player's worked or they're willing to sell a player, there's no pride about, oh, we just signed this guy, or this manager's going to have to get used to this guy, or, oh, we couldn't possibly sell him yet. We'll try and loan him and maybe it'll work in 6 months' time. And they will just move. They will just move and cut and go if they have to.
Drinkwater was here for, what, 4 seasons?
This is it. I mean, how many loans? Bakayoko, how long was he at the club? It was madness. And that was a very different way of doing things. I really don't want to be portrayed as saying one was better than the other.
No. Yeah,
they both have advantages and disadvantages. And the last regime was very much about trying to protect value through not cutting and running and trying to let the player prove either at Chelsea or somewhere else that they still had a value. The current regime are way more move and go. If a player works, brilliant. If he doesn't work, go again. And that's where we are with Dewsbury Hall.
Well, it's where we are with a lot of the outgoing lists, to be quite candid. Cesare Casadei, obviously lots of rumors about Torino, Napoli, a bunch of clubs in Italy in for him.
There's also clubs in Holland, clubs in France. He will get a move this month. He must be. I'm surprised at how much interest this guy has got. He's not a bad player, but he's got a lot of it. There must be people who know way more about football than me who see more in him, because he's got a lot of interest. Chelsea have turned down bids from Torino. I don't think he'll end up going to Torino. I think he'll end up going to a slightly bigger club than that. Napoli's been out in the press. Like I say, there's Dutch interest, there's French interest. And Chelsea hope to get sort of 20, 25 million euros. We'll see whether that's achievable. But there's a lot of interest there. They'll sell him this month. And I can't remember how much he came in for, but I suspect they're going to make a profit on him.
I think it was 20.
20?
If I'm not
okay.
mistaken.
Certainly book value. Book value, they will make a profit on him. Whatever his book value is now.
Another example of this, potentially, and this one surprised me. I don't know if you've done a check on Renato Vega. He is apparently the only left back cover that we have, and there's interest in him from Italy. Is that something that you see?
Yeah, he's one I'm not so sure on. I'll be honest with you, he's one I'm not so sure on. But yeah, it's interesting that he's been linked with a move away not so long ago after we found out he wasn't in the squad.
So I thought he was like a manager's type player.
Yeah,
you know,
so did
I. A really good squad guy. Like that one kind of took me aback, to be honest.
Yeah.
You mentioned Axel Disasi.
Yeah, he's for sale.
What's the look on him? I mean, obviously his form has not been good, but he's shown bright spots. This is a year and a half in. Like he's only been here for a year and a half.
I think the thing about Disasi, I think a lot of clubs, if you play a certain way with Disasi, he's a perfectly decent defender. You know, he can't play Maresca's way. He can't get anywhere near playing Maresca's way. He's a terrible fit for Maresca's system. Chelsea have recognised that. There's no bad feeling towards him or the transfer, but there's a recognition. And what they are trying to do is they really want to commit to Enzo. I hope I don't have egg on my face at the end of the season on that. I'm confident I won't at the moment. They're really trying to commit to Enzo. And what they're trying to do is continue to purge the squad so that they have a squad that fits him. Because at the moment, they still have a bit of a squad that's a bit of a mishmash of different managers and different thoughts and different philosophies. And they really want a squad that fits one philosophy. And that's where really Disasi is probably the biggest loser. His reputation, certainly in France, is still high. Like I say, I think lots of clubs who don't necessarily play in the same way of Chelsea will see a person who's a perfectly good defender, who's good in the air and also can provide a threat from set pieces. Whether you can sell him for what you want to sell him in this month would be my only issue, because I still think Chelsea will want quite good money for him. I haven't been given a valuation, but I'd be surprised if they're sort of giving him away for magic beans.
I think I love giving him away for magic beans. It's so good. You can really turn a phrase there, Matt. I think we signed him for like 40 some odd million, if memory serves. And
yeah,
so
I had 35 in my head, but maybe it was more like 40. But yeah,
what's is it 25? Is it
that would
30?
be lovely. I haven't been given a valuation. That'd be my guess. That they'll want to get back, work out the book value, which is easy to do. And there's probably your valuation, because I wouldn't have thought they'll expect to make huge profit on him. But
it's also not on massive wages.
Not on big wages, so that shouldn't be a problem. But they really want to sell him and not loan him. Whether that remains realistic through the window, and whether they actually end up having to loan him to try and get the figure they want to get, we'll see. But at the moment, they're trying to sell him.
One that popped up recently, and I don't know if you have any intel on Joao Felix, but this is one that I think a lot of Chelsea fans are torn on. Any thoughts on him moving potentially in January?
I wouldn't have thought so. Purely because, look, they've been lucky with Cole Palmer injuries so far. I say lucky. Lucky's not the right word. Cole Palmer hasn't had an injury yet.
They've managed him well. Yeah.
They've managed him well. They've managed him really well. He's also avoided injury. Touch wood, that remains the case, and they never need to plan for it. But the plan with Joao Felix was always to have what they feel is high quality replacement should Cole get injured. I can't believe they're going to take the risk of dumping that, because it would be absolute sod's law that the minute the transfer window shuts, Cole Palmer would get injured and they'd have got rid of Joao Felix. You can just see it written on the wall. The other thing I'd say about Joao Felix is there is an issue around Christopher Nkunku, which I believe you're probably going to come on to. If Nkunku goes, Joao Felix, and you will hate me for saying this, is one of the players who could potentially fill in as a false number 9 in cup competitions or Conference League if you lose the Nkunku option of filling in for Jackson in the Conference League and stuff.
No, makes sense. I mean, I think those two are inextricably linked. I mean, let's just talk Nkunku really quick. I mean, this is I think for a lot of Chelsea fans, the big one. I think he's clearly not getting the sorts of minutes that a player of his caliber would have expected to get. I also think that comes with the caveat that he, in my eyes, is a non-professionally trained football coach. Doesn't work as hard off the ball as Nico Jackson does, and doesn't do some of the important Maresca system things that would make him an indispensable starter in the Premier League. So, I mean, he's clearly a talented guy who can score. He's clearly not a striker. He's clearly a number 10 or a second striker, as we've always known. And yet no one's figured out a way to get him into that role consistently. What happens here? Is this a January thing? Is it a summer thing? Is it destined for a breakup? Is there any reclamation possible?
I'm pretty confident he'll go. It's just whether it's January or summer. If they get a bid for him that they feel is good, they'll accept it. Because they know that the player.
Is this like Disasi though? Is this a system thing, or is this we just simply it's a bit of,
it's a bit of a system thing because there's not really a position for him. And I think it's also a little bit that in recent weeks I have had a look at him in the Nico Jackson role, and it's clear he's not that. They are also aware that there's a little bit of unhappiness from his side and frustration from his side, which came out sort of slightly publicly a few months ago. So, and his age, look at his age, his injury record. If you put it all together, while he's still scoring a lot of goals in the Conference League, and while his reputation is high, if they get a decent bid for him, it makes total sense to sell, in my opinion. And that could be January. It could be the summer. I don't see them loaning him out in January. They'll never say never. But I think if they got a good bid, and it would be interesting to see what PSG do if and when they get rid of Kolo Muani, because that would be certainly one you would look at and think is a sensible fit. But yeah, I'm convinced he will go either in January or in the summer.
Last one to touch on the outs, from what I can tell, although you correct me if there's some other ones I should be thinking about here. Carney Chukwuemeka, the club have, I think briefed pretty explicitly that, they have a valuation for him. If that valuation is not met, they will not sell him. But he's a young guy, clearly desperately in need for football, clearly doesn't fit into Maresca's plan. Thoughts?
He has a release clause of about £40 million. I struggle to find anybody on this planet who thinks he's worth £40 million at the moment. So that's why I started smiling when you talked about that, because I get why they have to say he's got a release clause, and if someone meets the release clause, we'll sell him. Yeah, good luck. And I think they'd probably have to sell him for a fair bit less. Again, they don't want to loan him. They want to sell him, whether that changes through the window. West Ham definitely are there with him. And again, if Potter takes West Ham, I think Potter likes him, although he'll be very aware of his injury record. So worth looking at. There might be some other options for Carney as well. But I'm not seeing anyone paying £40 million for him.
Well, certainly Dortmund won't pay £40 million for him. We know that, and there's been a little link there as well. But is there anyone else on the outgoings list for this very small transfer window that you're like, hey, I think you might want to take a look at this person or this person?
I think we've covered it all. I think we've covered all the potential outs. Yeah.
Injuries and outgoings create the incomings list. The incomings list could be any goddamn thing right now, to be honest. Like, feels like there's it's like center back, potentially left back, midfield. There's been a link to a left winger, and I think everyone's interested in some sort of striker option if any of the outgoing scenarios happen. Let's talk about center back first. Mark Guehi, Trev Chalobah potentially recalled. Aaron Mainoo obviously comes into the club in January. Thoughts about center backs and what might happen there if certain scenarios take place?
So Chelsea have a list of centre backs that Mark Guehi's on, and they've asked Palace for a valuation on Mark Guehi, which is kind of why it all blew up this week, because that came out. Don't quite know, certainly not from the Chelsea end, but it came out from somewhere that after Chelsea had asked valuation on him.
Way to keep it under the radar, boys. Nice.
I don't know why, what that valuation was told to them, but I'm told it hasn't actually moved past that yet. That's not to say it won't. I find it interesting that around the same time the noises of the Trevor recall came about. Now, this is purely my cynicism going into overdrive as a journalist, but if I was a cynical guy, I would say that having out there that they might be able to recall Trevor might be quite a neat technique towards trying to start a negotiation over Mark Guehi, or slightly scare Palace a little bit into thinking, well, if they don't sign Guehi, they're just going to take Chalobah straight back off us. And then, we don't get any solutions. So I think that those two intrinsically linked. I am also told that it's very unlikely Chelsea would or could do Guehi this month without either outgoings or doing something in the opposite direction. If you look at all their summer business, pretty much that's what they were doing. You know, it was Gallagher to Atletico, João Felix the other way, it was Maatsen, and it was the boy Kellyman on Villa. There was a lot of that, and it's lots of clubs have to do it. We talked about this before. That's what PSR world has left us in. And again, most clubs are in that position in January, and Chelsea are one of those clubs that will probably operate a little bit like that. So I would say that the Chalobah situations and Guehi are linked. What I would say is, you could understand if Chalobah was very reluctant about the idea of coming back, given he had his squad number taken off him and wasn't training with the first team and wasn't even eating in the canteen at one point. It's going well for him now at Palace after he started off the season injured. But also secondly, and this is interesting, even if Chelsea wanted to try to do some sort of deal whereby they sold Chalobah to Palace permanently in January, and that helps them buy Guehi, you know, because they tend to do these things in separate deals. If you look at Felix and Kellyman and Maatsen and stuff. But I wouldn't necessarily assume that Chalobah would want to go to Palace permanently in January either. This loan is working really well for him, and I would imagine he'll be looking at it thinking in the summer, I would like to know what all my options are. Yeah. Rather than committing to a Palace team who might sell Marc Guehi and also might sell an Eberechi Eze come the summer. So I wouldn't say it's definite that Chalobah would even be up for changing his loan to Palace for a permanent move. So there's a lot of ifs and buts, and there's a lot of people being very careful about the way they're speaking about the Guehi thing. And look, it might happen, but it's a long way from being anywhere near there at the moment, and it's certainly difficult. And there are certainly other options as well. Other than Guehi and Chalobah, I'm told there are 100% other options at this stage. I don't know who they are.
You're not going to name names? Come on, man. What are we?
I could name you some names who it is, and I simply don't know at the moment. I mean, hopefully I will find out in the next few days or weeks, but I don't know. I threw in a few names there. Look, I'll tell you that my contacts, I've thrown names such as Zabiani at Bournemouth at them, being told Chelsea like him, but don't see a deal being done for him this month. The Barcelona defender, is it Arajal? I've thrown him at someone and being told, we've looked at him, but don't see us doing that one this month. So I don't have the names exactly on the list, but there seems to be a list.
So Diamonde out there, there's all sorts of stuff. What role do you see Ansel Mainoo playing in this? Do you think that there's a chance that he plays at all, or is this a youth team sort of development guy for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think it's a development. He's coming in to get used to the environment, get used to the country, get used to. I don't see him being relied upon over the second half of the season now.
Obviously, Chilwell, one name that we didn't really talk about from the outgoing section, but obviously he's up for sale.
So Chilwell, I forgot. Sorry. So Chilwell, he's the one senior player that they will immediately consider loans for. They don't like to loan out senior players. They like to try and sell them if they're going to get rid of them. Chilwell is seen as a special case. They think he's acted superbly. They are sympathetic of the fact that it's not easy for the guy, having been cast aside by the new head coach. Again, when we say about the fits for the system, I said Disasi is probably the biggest fall guy. Actually, Chilwell is. They will consider loans from the off for Chilwell, and they do expect to get rid of him on loan in this window. I think you probably want to look at clubs who play a back three with wing backs as potentially being places where they might look for a loan on him if they don't do other things. I'll let you all make up your minds on teams that might be. But yeah, they think come nearer the end of the window there'll be options for Chilwell. I really hope there are 45 minutes football in the first half of the season for a guy who's always been a class act for Chelsea, been a captain, always put his all in, been through some horrendous injury setbacks. I really hope he gets something sorted.
Is there any left back cover if he does go? Does Chelsea look at left back cover, or are they just gonna risk it and hope that Cucurella stays healthy?
The only thing I can say on that is I have been told that they, depending on the outgoings, they could look to accelerate things that they had been thinking they could do in the summer. Now, I don't know if that expressly means left back, but I thought when I was told that the two positions that came to mind were left back and striker, that they'd probably been looking more towards the summer on, and probably still think more towards the summer. But if the outgoings go really well and there's an opportunity, they might therefore accelerate something. That's the way it was phrased to me, that if things go in the direction they hope on outgoings, maybe they accelerate something they'd been lining up for the summer.
Any name on left back that you're tracking?
No. None.
Fantastic. Good. So that'll be a surprise. You said striker. I mean, obviously Mark Guehi is starting to, it looks like, get more minutes, and I'm happy for him. I think there's a significant gap between him and Jackson. What sort of profile are they looking for at striker? Is this a out and out competition for Nico Jackson? Is it a clear backup role? Like, what's your read on this?
No, I think out and out competition. I think I don't think a sort of bench warmer type backup. I think if and when they do one, I really think they'll go for, I'm not saying they're going to go for, Erling Haaland or something, but I think they will go for someone who could potentially step straight into the first team and really challenge with Nico. Yeah. I saw this week.
We talk about Shesko, like what sort of?
I know that Guy Corres, following them on Instagram, caused some amusement within Chelsea this week, because I think they saw that there was a lot of 2 and 2 being put together on that, and I think there was kind of some quite good amusement. Look, Maresca, I was surprised at how obvious he made it of how much he loves Liam Delap when we asked him about it after the Fulham game ahead of the Ipswich game. He knew what we were doing. We asked him about Liam Delap for one reason, and it wasn't because they were playing Ipswich. We just used the Ipswich game as a tidy little hook to ask him about Liam Delap. Enzo Maresca, exactly. Really? Enzo Maresca is a clever man. He doesn't need us to nudge him the wink, and he went for it big time. So, definitely have an eye on Liam Delap. I would suggest a heavy eye on. And then, there's a lot being linked. It, like I say, the Guy Corres thing following them on Instagram did cause a lot of hilarity inside Chelsea this week in terms of the game that was playing.
Midfield is the only other question I really have.
You're going to ask about Kobbie Mainoo, right?
Well, he was on the list, but down the list a little bit. What are the odds that either Leslie Ojukwu or Andre Santos and or another midfielder come in this window? Because I think this is the area that I have listeners of the pod will know that I've been most concerned about in the team, especially because Lavia can't stay healthy. What's the vibe on that?
I've always been told, we've talked about this before, I've always been told Santos will spend the season at Strasbourg and come back in the summer as a first-team squad player, and that they fully commit to that and believe that is the best way to deal with him. I actually agree, and I have heard nothing to throw me off that path. I never say never with this Chelsea ownership, because I've been caught out with it too many times.
My dream is dead. That's what you're saying. My dream is completely dead of Santos coming back.
Well, no, because like I said, I've been caught out by this Chelsea ownership changing their minds before. And who's not to say they don't change their minds? But that's always what I've been told. And I've not been told anything to deviate me away from that belief. So I would expect Santos to stay where he is. And then your dream will come true in the summer.
Excellent.
Leslie will clearly... Has Leslie already come back? I need to check on that because
as of this recording, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think he got a little. There was a little bit more hope for him with the man. Did he start with Jurek or come off the bench? It was one or the other. I know there was a little bit of hope with the new manager at Southampton. I think, though, there's a good chance Leslie will return. It's just whether he then goes back on loan or not. And at this stage, I don't know, is my honest answer. On Kobbie Mainoo, true to say, player they like. True to say that. But way off anything happening there. I mean, you could draw a list as long as my arm of famous players and very exciting players they like, and that if they became available, they would try and bid for. Kobbie Mainoo is on that list, but he's not been made available. There's not been a discussion on him. There's not been a conversation on him. I think Kobbie Mainoo will probably end up signing a new contract at United. It feels to me like this is contract negs. If he doesn't, and that situation does develop whereby United actually actively have to look at selling him, then do expect Chelsea to be there. But we're miles away from that at the moment.
That one felt, when it broke, I mean, we're recording this Wednesday. It'll be published Thursday. I think that broke Tuesday. That one felt like the old Arsene Wenger, I almost signed Ronaldo 4 times sort of vibe. Like, of course he's going to end up at United. What are we talking about here? Are there any other midfield names that are more realistic, perhaps, that you're like, hey, that's something to look out for?
So you're not going to like this, and I would certainly never say never, because I do think it depends on the outgoings. But as I sit here today, out of central defender, left back, striker in midfield, I would have thought midfield is least likely for anything to happen in January out of all those positions. I'm not sure your view is necessarily universally shared within Chelsea. That's not to say it's not the correct view, but I think Chelsea think they're in pretty decent shape in the centre of the park.
We do disagree on that front, but they are not paying me. They're not paying me for my advice, Matt. So that's a fair enough point. All right. Well, look, we'll end it there. We're going to talk 2 more times before the end of the month.
For
sure. And there's going to be tons of stuff that we just talked about that will be disproven immediately after.
The most important thing we need to talk about as well is arranging the beers for when you guys come over.
Well, I mean, look, there's going to be plenty of time for beers. We're over from the 28th all the way to the 3rd. And so we will have a good old sesh in there.
It's got to be done. Got to be done. I need that to look forward in January, in this bleak January. I need that to look forward to.
Well, that'll just warm the cockles of your heart, because we will certainly be on the beers when we are over, Matt. But lovely, thank you for the extended special after we had a misfire on the previous one. And look, Chelsea fans, long window ahead. Just stay patient. There's a lot of stuff that will happen, obviously. But until next time, keep the blue flag flying high.